All right, let's talk about adding. Whoa, the screen looks funky. Hold on a second. Okay, we're going to add two functions here, right? We're going to add f of x and g of x together to make this new one called h of x. So this is a pretty relatively basic one. So we're just going to take substitute in. So this function f of x is the same as x plus 2. So we'll do, put it in parentheses, x plus 2. And then we're going to add g of x, which is this whole one here. And so we're going to put that in parentheses, and we'll do x squared minus 3x plus 2. All right, and then we're going to combine these like terms. So we end up with x squared, negative 3x, positive x, so negative 2x, and then plus 4. Okay. Next one, what we're going to do is we'll go down here, number 2, and what I'm going to do is going to multiply these two functions, right? So I'm going to create a new function, h of x, and what this is saying is whatever the result of this function is, okay, I'm going to multiply it by whatever the function of this thing is, right? So the same value for x, I put in both places, and then you end up multiplying the same thing, okay? But if we don't know what x is, we can sort of solve the equation ahead of time. So same idea, we'll take g of x, so we're going to do x squared minus 3x plus 2, and we're going to multiply that with x plus 2. And here you can do either sort of the FOIL method or distributive method, or you can do your grid method, right? If you remember, you can make kind of a box here where you put in the different terms for each of them and then add them all up, okay? I'm going to avoid that right now, and I'm just going to go back to doing just multiplying it out. So I'm going to x squared times x is x cubed, x squared plus 2 is going to be 2x squared. Then I'm going to get minus 3x squared, and then minus 6x plus 2x, and then plus 4. And then look for like terms that I can combine. And so I'm going to end up with x cubed minus, wait a second, 2, oh, this is supposed to be 2x squared. Okay, so 2x squared minus 3x squared, so minus x squared minus 4x, and then plus 4. Okay, and so there's this is what h of x is going to be equal to. So if I knew what x was, and it was going to be the result of multiplying this function times this function, I can find it out by actually just plugging it in here, right? So if x was 1, I'd get, let's see, we'd go, if h of 1 would be equal to 1 minus 4 plus 4. So actually it would be equal to 0, I guess, right? 1 minus 1, 0, negative 4. So that'd be 0. So if I plugged it in here, right? So if let's say I plugged in 1 plus 2 is 3, and then this would be 1 minus 3 plus 2. So that would end up being 0. So 0 times 0 times 3 is 0. Okay, same idea. And so you could do that instead of plugging in a number here, solving this one, plugging a number in the same number here, solving this whole one, and then multiplying those two results together. You can just plug it into this function to just end up with your the same result. Okay, little bit more tricky one that takes a little more idea is, okay, so with this one, what we're saying is in order to right, okay, so in order to find h of x is just going to be my end result. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the function of x, right? So this thing here, right, x plus 2, and I'm going to use that function in order to, or the result of that function is what I'm going to use to plug in here, okay? So it's, if let's say x is, we'll say 0, so f of 0 is equal to 2. So then I'm going to take that and plug it into g of x, right? So f of x. So it's, like I said, if f x is 0, then f of x is 2. So then f of x is 2. So then I'm going to use 2 in this place, okay? Because that's what let's say the function. Figure out what the result of the function is here, and then use that as the input for here. So then I'd plug it into that area. Okay, so we'll test that one in a second by using 0. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to plug it in. And so basically, f of x takes the place here. So anything I see for x here, I'm going to substitute in this. Okay, so I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, instead of, right, g of x here, I'm going to say x plus 2, that's this x, and I'm going to square that, minus 3 times x plus 2 plus 2. Okay, and then what I can do from there is I can solve that and or simplify it. So let's go ahead and do that. So this one is going to be what? X squared plus 4x plus 4 minus 3x minus 6 plus 2. So I should get, let's see, x squared plus x, and then I get 6. Oh, so that's it. Just x squared plus x, I think. Okay, so let's test it. Before we decided to do is we were going to plug in 0, right? So if I plug in 0 for this, I get a 2. So then I'm going to plug in 2 for here, and I'm going to get, let's see, 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 minus 3 times, so that ends up being 0. Okay, and that would work here too, right? If I plug in 0, 0 squared is 0 plus 0 is also 0, okay? So what I can say here is h of x is going to be equal to this one, okay? Really the key is to say this piece here goes in for each of the x's in your other equation, okay? It becomes the substitute, all right? And one of the keys is you need to put it in parentheses because this x is x plus 2 and it's inside the x squared, okay? So let's see, I think I got another, let's see, let me delete this. I'm using a new program here, so let's try, actually, I need to go down this way. I have another. Let's see. You're gonna have to let me know if you need more information about domain of functions. I can do that for you. Or domain. Find the domain. I think that's all I have. Oh, here we go. We can do this one. Okay, so we can evaluate this one for. This is kind of that internalized one, right? So we'll go ahead and go through this one real quick. Let me bring it back into my screen sketch. Okay, so again, we're going to evaluate f of g of negative 3 for when f of x is equal to negative x squared plus 2 and g of x is equal to 3x plus 1. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do is, I mean, the sort of simplest way to do it, the one that is the least amount, is to figure out the g of x part, right? Or we could plug it in. I mean, we could do it a couple different ways, but what we could do is we could take g of negative 3, right? So we'll take negative 3 in here, right? So g of negative 3 is equal to 3 times negative 3 plus 1. So that's going to be equal to negative 9 plus 1, which is equal to negative 8. So I know that g of negative 3 is equal to 8, right? So when this thing is, the input is negative 3, I get a negative 8 out, right? Well, what that means is I can then say this f of g of negative 3, right, is negative 8, so I can do f of negative 8 is equal to negative, right, x squared plus 2. So then we'll do this. We'll say negative 8 squared plus 2. So what's that equal to? Negative 8 squared is 64. 64 make that negative. So negative 64 plus 2 is equal to negative 62, like that. Okay, now let's try it again another way. Okay, so then I'm going to delete that and let's go ahead and let's do the function, right? So let's do f of x or f of g of x. All right, so let's pretend we're just doing f of g of x. Okay, so we'll plug it in. So we want to know g of x is on the inside, right? So this is going to take the place of x. Okay, so then 3x is going to go in here for that one. So we'll say f of g of x, okay, is going to be equal to negative, and this is the new one, so we're going to do 3x plus 1 squared plus 2, okay? If we do this correctly, when we plug negative 3 in at the end, we should get negative 62 again. So let's try it. We get negative, okay, so 3x squared is going to be 9x squared. I'll put this in parentheses. Plus 6x plus 1 plus 2. So then I get, oops, that's supposed to be squared. So I get negative 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. Okay, so now let's plug in negative 3 and see what happens. So we get negative 9 times negative 3 squared minus 6 times negative 3 plus 1. And we're going to get negative 9 times 9 minus, oh, this is going to be plus 18 plus 1. So negative 81 plus 19. Okay, so then let's see what's 20 below 81 is 61. So it's going to be negative 62. Okay, same idea, right? So we know that f of g of negative 3 is going to be equal to negative 62. And we found it two different ways. The first way I think is a little bit less work, okay? Because if you actually know the number, just evaluate. You don't have to worry about expanding any binomials or any of that kind of stuff. So hopefully this helps. Let me know if it doesn't. Let me know if there's other questions you have. Post them in the comments, email me, any of that stuff.